Greetings and felicitations.
Hip hip hurrah, tally ho.
Hey, my little Georgia Peach.
Hey, Puddin'.
Today, we're going to discuss Star Trek. How Much for Just the Planet? The novel by John M. Ford. What does the back cover say?
Dilithium, in crystalline form, is the most valuable mineral element in the galaxy. It powers the Federation's starships and the Klingon Empire's battlecruisers. Now on a small, out-of-the-way planet named Direidi, the greatest fortune in dilithium crystals ever has been found. Under the terms of the Organian Peace Treaty, the planet will go to the side best able to develop the planet and its resources. Each side will contest the prize with the prime of its fleet. For the Federation, Captain James T. Kirk of the starship Enterprise. For the Klingons, Captain Kaden, vestai-Oparai, and the IKS Fire Blossom. Only the Direidians are writing their own script for this contest, a script that propels the crew of the USS Enterprise into their strangest adventure yet.
First of all, I was so confused when I read this novel. Now, it was released in 1987. I didn't read it till much later, and I read it right after I read the first John M. Ford book, The Final Reflection. Not knowing what I was going into initially, I assumed it would be a sequel to The Final Reflection, talking more about the Klingon culture, society, background. Boy, was I in for a surprise.
This book was nothing like The Final Reflection. I guess this one was sort of like John M. Ford trying to see how he could do with a comedy.
Yeah, this is so much satire here. It very much reminded me of The Restaurant End of the Universe, anything by Douglas Adams. It seemed like he was just trying to go for the absurdity in the Star Trek universe.
So, the book was just, it was really silly. So, totally different from other Star Trek books. I mean, this one was, we'll say, intentionally silly.
Yeah, like right at the beginning, they're talking about blue orange juice with Spock. Just very random, off-kilter things.
Well, the replicator was messing up, right? So, yeah, you had that. Yeah, there was comedy even on the Enterprise. Even though the book explains later on, when they go to the planet and there's all the silly stuff happening on the planet, the book winds up explaining what happened on the planet, about why it was so silly. But the silliness on the Enterprise at the beginning was just there, to match the tone of the rest of the book.
And I could picture that whimsical music that they would play on the original series. When Kirk is drinking that blue orange juice, right?
Yeah. So the book had like characters singing, and if you can recognize the the Weird Al version of the lyrics, I guess you would call it, the way they changed the lyrics from it's supposed to be a tune of an original song, of a song that but the book doesn't say what the song is, so you have to kind of try to figure it out if it's one that you know.
Now, oftentimes in Mad Magazine, we would see that. A little footnote saying sung to the tune of.
Right, they would tell you the tune of the song.
This one did not tell you the tune. So the entire time I'm reading these, and I'm not really picking up that it's a tune to a classic song. One that I did pick up immediately was a pattern of lyrics that followed Rawhide.
Yes.
That one was super obvious. So I was able to sing the Rawhide theme in my head while I was reading this song.
So other songs that the book used, they also did Falling in Love Again and Just a Gigolo, and probably some others too.
I did pick up Just a Gigolo. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yes.
And so another thing is some of the characters in the book were based on real people like Neil Gaiman.
Which was crazy to think that. I might have just found out about Neil Gaiman at that point. Whenever Black Orchid came out, that's the first Neil Gaiman comic that I read. And I think, it might have been 87. So to consider that Neil Gaiman was known within the literary world that early, pretty impressive, because he wasn't a household name until maybe the mid-90s?
Yeah, probably. So that is neat. And so some of the characters in the book were based on, and one of them was based on John Ford. And some other of the Star Trek authors, he actually characterized in this book, or use some of them as models for the characters. So that was pretty neat. But the book itself had a lot of silly stuff, though, and it made it kind of like unreadable for me. I didn't go for all this silly stuff.
I have to say, I had to keep putting it down. Like, I couldn't. Sometimes I'll be so absorbed into a book, 2 hours will fly by, and I didn't notice I'd been sitting there for 2 hours. This is one, after 20 minutes, I was like, okay, I gotta take a little break for a little bit.
Yeah.
This is a little bit too off the wall for me. Though it wasn't bad. It still had, it had that twist ending, which I liked. I think the ending wrapped things up better for me and made things more sensible to me of why everything was just so off the wall on this planet. But I think also that every once in a while, the Star Trek books need something a little bit absurd, just like the TV show. The TV show you had tense episodes, you had legal episodes, you had adventure episodes, and then you had a trouble with tribbles. You kind of need to break that up a little bit. So I can see why this book has its place in the Star Trek litverse.
Yeah, I think it's okay to sort of have one to break the monotony, like the fourth Star Trek movie. After the other three before it had been so serious, then you had Star Trek 4 that was more of a comedy. I guess this book just sort of took it in the wrong direction for me.
Yeah, and because my expectations of what John Ford did in the past, not only for Final Reflection, but also all he did for the FASA, Star Trek manuals, my expectations going into it was a bit jarring because I was expecting something deeper. And then it took me about 2 or 3 chapters to realize, okay, this whole thing is going to just be absurd. But I did like the fact, I thought it was a fun fact, that they had another ship involved as well, a smaller ship involved, and you got to see the adventures of this small ship and how they related in the Federation. So it wasn't just Enterprise focused.
It was an interesting idea, to see what happens on this other ship, to get a feel for what it's like when you're not on the Enterprise. That was interesting. But it's really sad that that's all that John M. Ford wrote for Star Trek, because he could have, and he passed away. So, it's sad to think that maybe he could have done something else that really could have been a good follow-up to the Final Reflection along the same lines as Final Reflection, and be that serious and be that good. So it's too bad it never happened.
I agree. Interesting to note as well in what other books came out before this and after this. Riansu, The Romulan Way, came out before this. I think it's interesting that you had a Romulan book, and then a book that had somewhat of a Klingon focus. I wouldn't say it was totally Klingon focused, but you did have some Klingon activity as well.
Yeah, he does still keep the Klingons in this book, even though it's sort of like only part of the story.
So there was a deep-seated cultural book preceding this book. So in the timeline, if you were reading the books when they came out, it would make sense to have a deeper book and then a more lighthearted book. I could see why the publishers released this when they did. And then after this was Bloodthirst,
which was another serious book. And we know that Star Trek can do comedy well, like in The Trouble with Tribbles or The Voyage Home. This one, it's still tried to go overboard with the comedy.
And this was just wacky.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the best way I could describe it. It was just so wacky. I'm glad it's there. I'm glad that it could show the variety of writing for Star Trek, because that's one of the best things, why I think that the Star Trek universe is the best universe, because it does have something for everyone. You're not going to like everything, because this buffet is just so ginormous. Other franchises have a buffet with 10 items on it, 15 items on it, 20 items on it. The Star Trek buffet has hundreds of items on it.
Well, especially now, because of all the different series.
Oh my, it's just insane, yeah.
And all the Star Trek series are different, and some people like some of them and not others. So, yeah, definitely there's something there that somebody could like.
So I give the publishers credit of releasing something this off the wall. It's just not for me. People who love it are people who love total satire. I'm just not of that mindset. But I'm glad I read it. So how do you rate this book?
Pretty low. I'll say 1 Quatlu out of 5.
Wow. Yeah, that's really low. So that's, I was going to say 2 Quatlus out of 5. There are moments on it that I found, especially all the sequences of Kirk taking his pants off, and it was like Three Stooges. It was just so absurd that there were points I did laugh out loud, but I had to shake my head over, like, what is this? Is this even in the Star Trek universe? But it is. It was a ridiculous aspect of it. I did still find some joy. I may give it 2 Quatlus, a little bit more than you. And that's it, the final John M. Ford book. Unfortunately, he passed away on the younger side of life, so we're not going to get anything else out of him.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.